Hi, I'm Aerion Brandon, and this is episode 2 of the videos that go along with the Aerion coat. So last time we talked about, as an introduction, kind of what the yarn was, what the coat was all about. And this time what we're going to do is we're going to walk through just a quick walk through the pattern itself and how it's laid out. And then also we're going to walk through the construction of the coat. And I know a lot of people have seen the coat, they've put it on, and they said, oh, I could never do that. Because it's a lot of knitting. Well, it is a lot of knitting. But the other thing they say is it looks complicated. And that's it. It only looks complicated. And what I'm going to do is, throughout this whole series, is take the construction points of the coat, which is essentially, it's a sort of kimono style coat, which means it's a flowy, drapey kind of thing, with the structure being added in with with these borders here. But it's also essentially just a long cardigan. It has a V-neck, and we'll talk about that in just a second, and it has these borders on it. So it is knitted completely in the round from the bottom up. And we're going to talk about all of that in just a second. You'll notice from your pattern, 24 pages is a lot of pattern for in any world, in any dimension. It's a lot of pattern. It's a lot of pages for a pattern. So, but if you look about it, so I'm talking about it. First page is in all of my patterns. The first page is like the big hero shot. It has very little information on it. It basically is just to say, here's what the thing looks like, head to toe, or whatever, the full thing. If it's a hat, it's the whole thing. The hat, usually it's front and back. And that's a page, if you're printing a pattern of mine, that's a page you don't necessarily have to print, because it takes up a lot of ink. I mean, I've printed the pattern. I got the pattern in front of me right now, and I didn't even print the first page, because it's just a lot of ink to do that. The next 3 pages, the whole construction of this coat is done on 3 pages. I mean, 3 pages right here. And it has there's a color picture on the last page, but the rest of it is just walking through how you put it all together. The next 20 pages, the first page is 1, and then you have 3 pages. The next 20 pages are a breakdown of the charts for the 2 chest sizes. And there are 2 chest sizes, that one of which is 49.5 and 49.5, sorry, and 53.25 inches around. So those are the 2 chest sizes, and that converts to 126 and 135 centimeters around. Then there are 3 lengths, and I know that's confusing because you're used to having, if it's a chest size 36, then the length of it is X, and if it's a chest size 32, then the length of it is Y, usually within an inch or two, half an inch, difference. But that's not the case in this, because this is not so each size can look similar in the coat. But this is your choice on how you want the coat, how long you want the coat to be. So the first length is a full length. Well, this is a full length. The coat comes in the 36-inch length, a 44-inch length, and a 52-inch length, or a 91 centimeters, 112 centimeters, or 132 centimeters. And that basically is kind of right at the knee to right below the knee to all the way to the floor. If you're I'm 5'6", so about if you're 5'6", let's put it that way. But you can take the length. The length is taken from the top of the shoulder down to what either 36, 44, or 52. So you determine which one you want to do. But the chest, any chest measurement can be done in any length. Either one of the chest measurements can be done in either length. That's the easiest way to do it. So when you get past the first 3 pages and you get to the pages that have all the charts on them, there are charts for the size A, which is the 49.5, or size B, which is the 53 1/4. So that way, if you are making the size A, you don't have to even look at the charts for size B. So you can just take all the charts for size B and just put them away someplace. And vice versa. If you're making the size B, put all the size A charts away. And so that's going to decrease your number of things to carry around. The other thing I tried to do is I tried to make these charts large enough so that you can see them easily without having to blow them up, yourself. But they should be all the fit on the 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. That being said, there are, especially the big chart at the bottom, I had to divide that into two sections, from the bottom to about midway up, and then from the midway up to the top, just so I can get it on large enough to go on and to across an 8.5 sheet of paper. Does that make sense? We'll go into that a little bit. If it doesn't, it will in a future episode. So what we're going to look at now is the construction of the coat. And we're going to start, I'm going to put this down on the floor here. What we're going to look at is we're going to start at the bottom, because it is a bottom-up coat. So let me change the camera around, and we're going to start at the very edge, kind of how it looks from the bottom. I could do it and just pull it up here and hold it up, but it's better to see it as it's hanging. So let's look at that now.
All right, so here we are. What's essentially, as I said, a long cardigan is what it is. So here's the opening for the cardigan right in there. And then there are two slits on the sides here. All of these, and I call these the kick splits instead of a kick pleat. All of these borders, these colorful like ones with the commas and things on them, there and on the front, they're all added later. So you have to create a hole for those to go into, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But in order to start this, you start at the bottom, as I said. You start with a facing, and this is the facing for the front, and you can see kind of how long it is. And it is, you can see I haven't completely sewn it down, but it's sewn down at the end, just like a hem, you sew it down. It has a little bit of these little squares on it to add a little interest to the underside. And it's not hard. You have to knit this flat, the other front flat, and then there's one across the back. You see, here's the one across the back that you put them all on one needle. And when you put them on one needle, you also put in the steek stitches to be placeholders for the opening. You put one set of steek stitches for the front, and then a set of steek stitches for both of these side splits on each side. And then you can knit around and around and around until you get to this point right here, where it's time now to add in the extra, and you'll see this later in more detail, but add in the extra space to put in these two borders for the splits on the side. And in order to do that, you add in cast on provisionally from this point all the way to this point. And that way you can then start just working up like that. So let's go back around front.
All right, so now you've got it up to the top of the kick split, and I can bring this up here so you can see it. Let's see if I can get it up here so you can see it. The top of the kick split, which is this is one of my favorite little charts. It's sleeve out of the way, get the thing, is this sort of I don't know what it's a lotus blossom, it's a crown, I don't know what, I love that. So, but you get there and you've got everything, you've added in your provisional stitches for that space, and you are now working around and around up into the underarm when you get to the underarm, okay? So that, as you know, the borders, as I told you, the borders are not in yet, so you've just got a steek going up the front here. You get to the underarm, place where the underarm is, and that is determined by what length, how long you make from the top of that big chart up to this point is that's where your length comes in. You can do all of this, you can do half of it, you can do a quarter of it, depending on what length you want. You can adjust it any way. Now, I will say, you have to do a whole heck of a lot of figuring if you do it something different than those 3 lengths that I called for, because the 3 lengths that I called for take into account this border. Does that make sense? If you start doing arbitrary in here, the numbers of this border may not work. So unless you want to do a lot of math, and have at it, I've done it for you. So do choose one of the 3 links. It's just easier that way. But you come to the underarm. There's a little bit of shaping here, and what you do is you put a couple of stitches on holders underneath the underarm, and then you come around. And of course, you'll be coming around. You start here, and you come around to this sleeve. I don't know whether you can see this sleeve, and you put these stitches on a holder, and then you add in backwards loop method steek stitches for the placeholder for the sleeve itself, and then you work all the way up. Starting here, you start doing decreases on the outside of that steek. So the steek is 10 stitches, and you start doing decreases before you get to those 10 stitches, 10 steek stitches. Steek stitches stay the same. They don't vary at all. They don't carry the pattern through it. Some people will do, and we'll talk about this in future. We talk about this in future episodes. But steeks are generally either stripes, because you've got 2 colors you're carrying, or checkerboard. I normally do a checkerboard, or some people do patterns. You're going to cut right through it. I don't know why I would do that, but that's just me. I don't know. Anyway, you get all the way up here to the shoulder. We do a 3 needle bind off on the shoulder, and then you come in and you cut open the steek for the sleeve, and then you why am I not turning right? Okay, then you start down from the top here all the way down to the wrist, and you're working along, and then you do this little trick which I'll talk about in detail. But you do this thing where you start, here's the here's the beginning of the round right underneath here, and you go along here until you get to one of the colors in this chart, and you're doing black and green. You drop the green, keep the black, drop the green, and you add in the color for whatever color for this chart is. Go all the way through the chart, come down here, drop that color, add the green back in, and go around to the end of the chart. And when you come back around, you come back the next way. So you're kind of doing intarsia and stranded work at the same time. But what it creates is it creates a standalone sleeve that is more like not like a medallion, but it kind of, if you didn't do that, so you see all this red and orange up here, you would be carrying that red and orange all the way underneath here, and I didn't want that to happen. I wanted it to kind of stand along on its own. But you get down here to the wrist, you add in, and you're decreasing all the way so that you come in from this big armhole down to the wrist, and at the wrist you'll add in, you go to a certain point, and this charts just tell you, and you go in and you add in steeks. This actually is my t-shirt, my sweatshirt. With a turtleneck underneath. You add in the steek stitches here so that you can have this opening. It's a little opening detail, and you're decreasing all the way down to your wrist to here, and then you do your turn there, and then you start in with the facing. And with the facing, if you're decreasing on the outside to come here, when you do the facing, you'll be increasing to match that same slope. When that gets done, then that just gets whipped into the inside. So that if you want to, you can fold the sleeves back, or just have a little flash of red on the inside, which is kind of nice. And then you need to go back and do the borders. And the borders, the worst thing about the borders I found is just picking up stitches. But the border, let's see if I can get this one up here so you can see it. Come here, darling. Okay, so here we've got a border that is like that for this opening. Okay, if you remember, you've got provisional stitches all across the top here that you've added in, and then you'll pick up, cut the steek open, and you pick up all along up here, you pick up all these stitches, and when you pick them up, then you start knitting back like this. But this last stitch you picked up, you're going to work together with the first of what was provisional stitches was now a live stitch, because you take off the chain stitch that's holding the provisional stitches and put them all on a needle. So you've got a needle, and it doesn't matter what size. You've got a needle holding these what were provisional stitches, but they're now live stitches here. Okay, you're coming up this way, and you and you work up to this point. You knit this stitch that's going this way together with the stitch that's going that way. You knit those together, and then you come down and you come back up, and you do the same thing all the way across to there, to the middle. And then you do a turning row, and you come back and do the facing with that, and whip that down. That's been just sewn down on the inside here too. So what you're doing is you're creating sort of a perpendicular knitting. You are attaching the top of this border to the bottom of where these provisional stitches were. I hope that makes sense. We'll get into it in detail later. And then you do that on both sides. And then you have to pick up the stitches for the front border. And the front border stitches are done, you cast on 5 stitches, place a marker, and then pick up all of these stitches around here, and then place a marker and cast on 5 more stitches. And those 10 stitches, 5 at the beginning and 5 at the end, are the steek stitches for the border, to be able to knit the border. Wait, where did that go? Okay. So that you can knit the border completely in the round. Okay, so here is anyway, so here is the border, you know, going all the way around. You go all the way around like this, so you can knit this all the way around until you get it done. And when you get it done, I think what I did is, I'm pretty sure I cast off the steek stitches for the front, and then cast them back on again, so that you weren't having to fold steek stitches when you folded the facing back. But that made it a lot easier to knit all this. You didn't have to do all of this long length flat, so it's all knitted in the round. And then all you're doing is just tacking down your facings on the bottom hem, on the back of all the borders, and on the arms, on the sleeves, at the wrist, and then you're done. So it's, as I said, a lot of knitting, but not hard to do at all. Next time, hold on, let me stop this and go get my next time. Sorry about that. Next time, what you need to do is you need to have your needles, you need to have your yarn, you need to ball up at least one color of every skein, one skein of every color. Make a ball. You know what I'm saying? Take one skein of every color, and ball it up. That's what I'm trying to say. Sorry about that. Anyway, you need to do that. And you're going to have to swatch. Now, here's the deal with swatching. It's color work swatching. So I would take the either this one of my favorite little whatever this is here. I would get that chart and maybe do that as a speed swatch or in the round. You also could do one of the border charts like this. Would take this and do about 4 inches of that. I would do it in the round, because that's where it's most all this is in the round. I'll do that and make sure you get your gauge. Get both your stitch and your round gauge, because this is dependent on that, the putting on the borders. So that's what you need to have done by next week. Then next week we're going to talk about reading charts, we're going to talk about casting on, we're going to talk about looking at the hem facings and joining them all on one needle. And I was telling you, once you get the hem facings done, which are flat, you're going to put them all on one needle and put steek stitches in between where it needs to go, so that you can get ready to work up the coat. So all right, so get your needles, work your swatches, and come back next time, and I will see you on episode 3. Thanks.